today we are going to be talking about cancel culture. And I'm going to start off by saying I'm not an expert on cancel culture, and I don't think anyone here is, but everyone's got their own opinions and views. And I feel like one thing that popped into my mind when we were speaking about cancel culture is Kanye West being cancelled recently. And what do you guys think about Kanye West being cancelled? Around his comment about Jews.
I think for myself, and I don't deify anybody. Like, I will, even when I read books, I'm thinking whilst I'm reading these books, or if I'm listening to somebody speak, I'm not just taking in what they're saying, I'm working out whether what they're saying aligns with my values. But, you know, he got deplatformed from everything. And yeah, he said things that certain groups of people didn't agree with, but I've seen people put worse stuff on the internet that they got nothing happen to them.
Because whilst he was saying that, I didn't see a lot of like actual, Jewish backlash against it, like people from the community actually calling him out, at least from like my side of Instagram and Snapchat and all the socials that I'm on. I didn't really get like a response because I feel like the term is very like detached. And like a lot of the time, anti-Semitism can be kind of used as a dog whistle as well for anybody that kind of wants to, be racist without actually properly getting into it, and just being provocative in general. So, yeah, it's disappointing, obviously, because he's a public figure and he should obviously be held accountable and to a standard. So that's all I have to say.
There are people on these platforms that, for example, one that is in real time that literally happened very recently as Elon Musk bought Twitter. Not to be too explicit, but there's a guy in America who he carried out a mass shooting after his trial was then let free, and he's currently verified on these platforms and has a blue tick. So how is Kanye West getting cancelled, but these guys are there like getting verified and that by these same platforms? So I think it's worth having these things in the back of your head to understand that sometimes what you're told is not always, the full story. But, again, not to question that what he said is obviously not right. But, yeah, just thought it was worth putting out there.
Me personally, I don't have an issue with cancel culture, but I have an issue when it's not consistent within itself. So, for example, guys like Donald Trump, when they were spreading hate against all different types of races, different types of communities, he was given a platform, or not given it, but he was allowed to maintain his platform. Whereas what's his name? The leader of the EDL, Tommy Robinson? Tommy Robinson was given a platform. He was given documentaries. He was given YouTube series. He was given everything to do what he done. He was allowed to march through different cultures or different countries' marches and intervene in them and counter-protest them. And he was allowed to do that under police protection.
When we were talking about the cancel culture and this threshold, I think the thing that we're forgetting is that should be the standard. I understand that maybe Kanye is being vilified to a different degree because of who he is, and obviously you have to start thinking about things intersectionally, so his race and things like that, So of course certain platforms and certain people are going to come for him way harder than they're going to come for Donald Trump. But that shouldn't take away from that conversation that we need to have about what that threshold is, and setting the standard for how we should treat people who say racist remarks, regardless of what race they're targeting, regardless of what race they are as well. And it's just unfortunate that other people haven't been held to that same standard, and that we had to, as a community, come out and say we're not gonna be okay with Kanye continuing this behavior.
Right, so how do we measure when we can cancel someone? When someone's hit the threshold of you're getting cancelled now, or how severe does the thing need to be? So take Will Smith, for example. He got cancelled for going on stage and punching the host. How severe does it have to be for it to be cancelled?
I think if it affects a group of people, or it is promoting hate speech, that should be the threshold.
Right.
And then acting upon it is another threshold that is hit. Whereas someone like Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, everyone can say in their lifetime they've done something that they regretted to one specific person. But rarely do you find someone saying that they've stood on a platform and preached hate to hundreds of people to affect another 1,000 people, if you get what I mean.
Right.
Like, imagine I was pissed with you so much, and I said the N-word to you. That, I'd say that wouldn't be forgivable because, like, no, going back on what the word actually means, it kind of like, it can actually give a really big, like, it can be a punch to someone of color when hearing that word. So I don't think all the time people can be forgiven just like that. It will have to take a long time.
I feel like racism, I'd say it just comes from ignorance. That's mostly it. And I feel like cancel culture is not a good solution to it because we need to have those difficult conversations. We need to, branch out and like even maybe actively find these people saying these, horrific things and reason with them. Because I feel like there's a gap in their knowledge. So yeah, as you were saying, learn about other cultures and everything like that. Because I feel like there's just a gap in their knowledge, or they've stayed in their same community, in their same kind of bubble their whole life, and they haven't branched out. So.
If you don't like one system, right, let's start having a conversation about it. And I'm not saying, not everybody has to be an entrepreneur, but there will be one ideas guy who has enough, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to create a better system and build it. And the thing is, I'm a big brand guy, right? So any business or any idea that I work on, like when we was on our way and I was talking to you about this new streetwear brand that I want to do, that it has to have a spirit and it has to have a soul and it has to have a DNA about it, and we got to build it on the right values. So if we don't like it, and I'm not saying we're going to build new hospitals and banking systems tomorrow, but the conversation has to start somewhere, and it's all about infrastructure. But before we get to infrastructure, what are the values of this company? Do you get what I'm saying? So that once we figure out the values and what it stands for and what it's going to achieve in society, then we just build that into the systems and we hire people based on those values, and then we have a better system.
I actually just wanted to talk about institutions, and something that was really interesting that we had spoken about earlier was actually institutions being cancelled, right? And one thing I wanted to talk about was, in relation to maybe media or that dichotomy between media and these institutions. For example, medical racism, but also what about like things like police brutality, and how in 2020 there was a huge backlash with the police actually around the world, and people saying, we want to defund the police. We want to inherently cancel them, right? Yeah. We don't want the police. We want something else. We want different community infrastructure. We want funding poured more into the community so we don't have to rely on infrastructures like the police. Mm-hmm. And so it's just really interesting that yes, the media does have a role to play within that, but also like the institution itself, right? It can't be changed from within, so people just kind of deconstruct it. They just want to get rid of it so they can have something else in place. In all form, cancelling it. So I don't feel like there's retribution for certain things because they're so inherently stuck. They're so used to their own systems. Like it's systemic.
Because we can't keep like I was talking to my friend earlier, he's working for Sky and he hates his job, and all he kept complaining about is, oh, you guys got it better because your parents this and that. And I said, yeah, you're right. I've realized my advantages and I play to my strengths. The difference between me and you is you're so focused on what you don't have that you're just sitting there like stagnant. So we can't just keep complaining about the problem. Complaining about problems don't solve problems. Solving problems solves problems. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I thought that's my rebuttal. There's a solution to every damn problem. It's just that sometimes the solution isn't the most convenient when you're starting out. It's hard, but we need to learn how to sit down and deal with hard problems, and that's how I see it.
Although obviously it is worrying how much children are being influenced by this sort of group mentality when it comes to cancel culture, I think we also need to recognize that, like, I think the younger generation are, even though they, maybe might lack some critical thinking in some form, they are also very empowered, way more than like certain generations where they're more outspoken and they really care about things like politics and political issues. And they've been disregarded before as, I know our generation have been called the snowflake generation because we're too sensitive about this. But then you have to think about it on the flip side. Like, are we too sensitive, or have we just been letting things slide? You know? Have we just been accepting the bare minimum when it comes to how we should be respected and treated as people? And maybe the younger generation aren't into that. Maybe that's why they're canceling people. But that's just food for thought, basically.
Cool. On that note, we're going to wrap things up. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah?